During the observation, I found it interesting that there was a lot of conflict within the company and all of the leaders. Nobody could come to a what's it called, a compromise, and they couldn't agree on what steps needed to be taken to solve problems. It was pretty interesting that it was informal. It was everybody was wearing, just t-shirts, shorts, jeans, and it didn't have a really good structure. And I believe that we could have done a lot better as a company to have a better meeting outcome.
During this observation, I found it very interesting that the managers made it feel as a safe place for their staff members to be able to share how their progress is going with their students, or how their day is going, any struggles they're going through, or just to be open to ideas with another, to feel supported. And I feel like that's very important in a workplace or in a company in general, because not a lot of companies do that, and that's where you don't get a functioning team as it's supposed to be. And I found that very interesting because throughout the meeting there were parts where there would be an open discussion, where there would be empowered to show or to tell different ideas or how they felt about the situation. And I feel like that's really important, and that was very interesting to see that.
So first, I'd like to talk about the observation paper. And so with the group that we observed in the observation paper, it was really interesting to see how they structure their meetings and how they kind of structure their overall relationship with management and with the employees. In that there was very little oversight in the meeting from a manager, from an owner, from someone higher up. And this was actually, I think personally, a strength of the meeting and a strength of the structure. It could have been carried out a little differently, but the idea of letting someone do their job, it's kind of one of those things where the cultural history, the American workplace was shaped by industrialization initially. And in industrialization, you didn't need individuality. You needed someone who could do this set thing every day, nonstop. They're part of the conveyor belt. And I think that's translated over into what we have now. So we don't really need individuality. We don't need people to have the freedom to do the job the way they want to do it. We need them to just do the job. When we allow for the individuality, when we allow for the freedom of letting someone like take the reins, we get much more, I would consider, like unique solutions. We get much more honest and like heartfelt solutions. And at the same time, people feel better in their job. Anyone who's ever worked with a micromanaging manager knows it's a nuisance, an unending nuisance. And I think that's why it's one of the bigger takeaways I have for that meeting, was the idea of just free range parenting, but in the workplace. You make sure goals and expectations are established. You make sure people know what the end project at the minimum needs to be, and then you let them go, see how they handle it, see how they would approach the problem given a little bit of freedom. And then second takeaway, I'm also talking about the research paper today. We've covered conflict, and I would like to talk about what I think is a more apt understanding of conflicts to apply to the workplace and to life. In that a lot of institutions try to avoid a discourse. They try to avoid conflict. They think conflict is something you deal with and then push away. When in reality, conflict's kind of a constant. We're constantly in conflict in a bunch of micro ways in our interactions. We disagree over ideas. We have differing opinions. We view things in different ways. We don't really get to use a personality test to pick employees all the time. So sometimes you get personalities that will clash. And so I think the more meaningful thing, instead of trying to avoid conflict, is to build a kind of workplace culture or just organizational culture that has safe avenues for the expression of conflict. Instead of allowing it to become a fight or an argument, you have a workspace where disagreements are able to be aired in an open and honest way, but through the lens of constructive criticism and through positive feedback, through not like you've allowed for there to be enough of an established relationship where there's an established respect where conflict is able to happen at a higher level. It's not happening in hurt feelings or angry text messages or emails. It's happening in a, hey, you're my equal. And as my equal, here's some of the things I see about this problem, about this program, about this project. And then you're able to go from there and do something better because you're not wasting time having the fight or having the argument. It's been interesting overall working with Team 5. I love them. They've been good people. Feel sometimes like we're on the Hot Mess Express, but we're riding the train together. So,
in conclusion, we found that conflict is inevitable and necessary within the workplace. Based on our studies, within each group, it may prevent groupthink and open our eyes and our conversations to become more aware of ourselves and to become more aware of how we are within the workplace, our personality, and so on. It's also important to recognize the differences amongst different team members and how each person responds to conflict. The most important aspect of conflict management is understanding that disagreements will happen and we may not find a solution, but we will try our best to find fairness and to find understanding from each side and listen and be a part of the conversation. Overall, when we open conversations to managing conflict, then pretending like conflict isn't there, we create a healthier workplace environment and a organization or nonprofit that will improve in longevity.